Well, if you ask me where I come from, here's what I tell everyone. I was born by God's dear grace, in an extraordinary place, where the stars and stripes and the eagle fly. It's a big old land with countless dreams. Happiness ain't out of reach. And if you've got pride and you're proud you do, yeah, we could use some more like me and you. Where the stars and stripes and the eagle fly. There's a lady who stands in a harbor for what we believe. And there's a bell that still echoes the price that it costs to be free. I pledge allegiance to this flag. That bothers you, well that's too bad. Cause if you got pride and you're proud you do, yeah, you can see what I do. Yeah, with the stars and stripes and the eagle fly. There's a lady who stands in a harbor for what we believe. And there's a bell that still echoes the price that it costs to be free. No, this ain't the only place on earth, but it's the only place that I'd prefer. Love my wife and raise my kids, yeah, the same way that my daddy did. Where the stars and stripes and the eagle fly. Where the stars and stripes and the eagle fly.
This next song we're going to do is dedicated to the people from Flight 93.
When he left for work that morning, he was just another guy going to work. He'd have to fly out to a meeting in LA, so she had kissed him twice goodbye. Little did she know she kissed a hero, though he'd always been one in her eyes. But when faced with certain death, he'd said a prayer and took a breath and led an army of true angels in the sky. Little did she know she kissed a hero, though he'd always been an angel in her eyes. Putting others first, it's true, that's what heroes always do. And now he doesn't need was wrong. I love you so. Last words he'd said, she said, I love you too. And then the phone went dead. Little did she know she kissed a hero. Though he'd always been one in her eyes. But when faced with certain death, he'd said a prayer and took a breath and led an army of true angels in the sky. Little did she know she kissed a hero, though he'd always been an angel in her eyes. Putting others first, it's true, that's what heroes always do. And now he doesn't need a pair of wings to fly. Now he doesn't need a pair of wings to fly.
Before we officially get started, I'd once again like to thank the Winds of Change for volunteering their time and talents tonight as part of our dedication ceremony. Again, thank you. And to all of you, good evening and welcome to the City of Brook Park, Kennedy's Veterans Memorial. And there are some other special guests I'd like to introduce here this evening. First of all, my wife, Vicki. My daughter Nicole is with her. Also, Lynn Nuzzo and her sons and family are with us here tonight. Council members Mike Lane, Mr. and Mrs. Lane, and Patty Astorino are with us here tonight. County Councilman Dale Miller is with us this evening. And also, the Berea City Schools are very well, strongly supported to our community. And although Superintendent Shepard was unable to be here, Assistant Superintendent Jeff Grossi is here with us. Principal over at Berea Mid-Park High, Vince Ruggiero. Board members Gail Patton and Berea City School Representative Nancy Brayford as well. Many of our boards and commissions, some of our employees, and many of you that live in our community and friends, we thank you again for being here tonight on a very special occasion, and we'll begin the program. I'd like to ask everyone to stand as we present colors by the Brook Park Police Department Honor Guard. March on the colors. Leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening is Eagle Scout Aaron Maxlin. Aaron has achieved the Eagle Scout and is the first one to do so in the American Legion Post 610 Boy Scout Troop. In addition, he is a member of the Berea Mid-Park Marching Band, and he's taken this evening off from practice to join us here on this very special evening. Aaron.
Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2.
Please remain standing as the Winds of Change sing our national anthem, followed by the Reverend Gregory Olszewski from Mary Queen of the Apostles, who will lead us in our invocation.
Oh, sing and you sweet, by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad sights and bright stars through the perilous fight, for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Father Greg Olszewski.
Thank you. In April of 2008, then Pope Benedict visited the United States and made a point of visiting New York City and at the foot of the World Trade Center. And this was the prayer of invocation he offered and still pertains to this day. O God of love, compassion, and healing, look on us, people of many different faiths and traditions, who gather today at this site, the scene of incredible violence and pain. We ask you in your goodness to give eternal light and peace to all who died here, the heroic first responders, our firefighters, police officers, emergency service workers, and Port Authority personnel, along with all the innocent men and women who were victims of this tragedy simply because their work or service brought them here on September 11th, 2001. We ask you in your compassion to bring healing to those who, because of their presence here that day, suffer from injuries and illness. Heal, too, the pain of still grieving families and all who lost loved ones in this tragedy. Give them strength to continue their lives with courage and with hope. We find mindful as well of those who suffered death, injury, and loss on the same day at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Our hearts are one with theirs as our prayer embraces their pain and suffering. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world, peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of the earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred. God of understanding, overwhelmed by the magnitude of this tragedy, we seek your light and guidance as we confront such terrible events. Grant that those whose lives were spared may live so that the lives lost here may not have been lost in vain. Comfort and console us, strengthen us in hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all.
Again, thank you to Aaron. You may all sit. And thank you, Father. This evening I get to be the Master of Ceremonies, but it is a tremendous honor to introduce this next gentleman who's going to share a great story with you. A story that certainly brought great fear to his family, but a very important story in the history of our country. 9/11 was has certainly changed our world for all of us, the way we live our daily lives. Angelo Nuzzo lived that day in a way that not many others can sense or feel that. Today he's going to share your story, and I'm proud to call Angelo a great friend. He's a great American. He did serve his country as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He's a great husband, a great dad, and a great grandfather. And tonight he's going to share and tell his story, and I think you all certainly listen quietly and listen intently, and you'll know why he's such a great man. My friend are also our safety director and a retired lieutenant colonel who was at the Pentagon on 9/11, Angelo Nuzzo.
I'm going to have to disappoint you. I'm not going to go into a lot of my story because I just happened to be in the building that day. I didn't save anyone. I wasn't hurt. I actually feel somewhat awkward being up here having to speak about it. But I know it brings healing to us as Americans. So that's why I want to share. Good evening, everyone, distinguished guests, family, friends. Thank you for coming out on this hot, balmy evening. We've set another temperature record today. Welcome to summer. 2 more days from now, Friday, it'll be 30 degrees cooler. My meteorology background comes out every once in a while, so sorry. 2 years ago when I spoke at the 10th anniversary 9/11 ceremony, Reynolds, I don't know if he's here, but it was one of our former service workers and current auxiliary police officer. He asked me why I wasn't in my military uniform. I had to tell him that amazingly my uniform had shrunk since the last time I wore it in 2005. Well, Paul, I didn't want to listen to some old Navy guy give me a hard time again. So as you know, I shrunk a little bit myself over the last year, and now I'm pleased to say that I've come full circle as I came into this job able to wear this uniform, and I'll leave this job proudly wearing my uniform. I ask for your indulgence for just a moment, please, as I use this last statement to transition into my next comments, as this likely will be my last time in front of this many people in my capacity as Brook Park's public safety director. I want to take a moment to thank a special person in my life. That's this guy back here, Mayor Mark Elliott, for number one, having enough confidence and faith to hire me, and number two, for the phenomenal job that you've done as our mayor of our great community. It's been almost 12 years ago that you hired me on the recommendation of a mutual friend. Neither of us really knew that much about each other, but now, nearly 12 years later, We both know the blood, sweat, and tears that we have poured into our jobs on behalf of the residents of this city. Mayor, you are not only my boss, but over time you have become a very good friend. I'll remember my time with the city fondly, and I will always appreciate your friendship especially. Lastly, I want to say on behalf of your staff and the residents of the city of Brook Park, thank you for your leadership and vision through the past 12 years. And I don't have to tell you this, but these have been some of the most challenging years in the city's history. You, sir, were the right man for the tough job of leading us through the minefield of significant economic challenges that this city has experienced. You should be extremely proud of what has been accomplished as your time as mayor. I know I am. Today's dedication of this special 9/11 memorial continues to beautify our Veterans Memorial Park, which began with the upgrades you orchestrated in 2003 and is a fitting tribute as you begin to wrap up your time as mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a standing ovation for my friend and our mayor, Mayor Mark Elliott. I may have just hastened my exit. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines the word memorial as a dedication to a person or persons or an event. I submit to you that today we are here to do both. The memorial we dedicate here today and the other 9/11 memorials throughout our country are a reminder to those of us who lived through that day, to those who were too young to remember, and to those who were not yet born, of the devastating destruction we witnessed on September 11th, 2001, and the horror, sadness, anger, and the myriad of other emotions that we experienced that day. Like the Arizona Memorial at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, this memorial will also stand as a reminder for all eternity of the hope, the strength, the courage, and the fortitude on which our God-fearing country was founded. For those of us who are old enough to remember September 11, 2001, when you visit this memorial in the future, you will recall with great clarity the events as they unfolded, where you were, what you were doing, and more importantly, the emotions that were racing through your mind and body as you sat with your eyes glued to your television watching the events of that day unfold. For those too young to remember, or those yet unborn at the time, like my beautiful little grandchildren, it stands as a solemn reminder of the horrific events and the innocent lives lost. An event that is a part of our country's history of which we should never, ever forget. In keeping with the dictionary definition then, this memorial also serves as a reminder of the loss of so many wonderful people, dads, moms, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, and friends. Innocent lives that were suddenly ended by a group of people who think that the values on which this country were founded are wrong. I think most of you, as the mayor said, know that I was in the Pentagon 9/11, about 300 yards away from where that plane hit. I was one of the fortunate ones. My life was spared that day. Had that plane hit the building 200 to 300 yards farther to the east, or had come in at a slightly different angle, I likely wouldn't be here today, as the death toll at the Pentagon would have been on the order of magnitude of what you saw at the trade centers that day. One of the things I remember from that day was the sound of sirens racing towards the Pentagon as I and thousands of my comrades were evacuating the building into the two major parking lots. You see, this memorial also serves as a reminder to the many heroes that day, to the police and the firemen who rushed into the burning Trade Center buildings and the Pentagon to try and save the people that were impacted by the exploding airliners. Dedicated men and women who accept the call to run to danger when others run away from it. I've had the distinct pleasure and honor to be the public safety director of our city for the past 7 years. And I have witnessed this firsthand as I have served with some of the most dedicated and highly trained safety forces in the area. I'll put my safety forces up against anyone's, any day, any time. And I salute them now for all they do to keep our community safe. Stories abound of the heroic people that sacrificed their lives, or nearly sacrificed their lives to save others who were in many instances complete strangers. I want to share brief stories of 4 individuals in particular who became heroes that day, people you have probably never heard of. People like police officer Morris Smith, a 13-year police officer on the New York Police Department. Officer Smith was married to another police officer and had a 2-year-old daughter at the time. She put her life in danger to rescue people in the World Trade Center. Of the 23 New York Police Department officers killed on September 11th, she was the only female. She was awarded the department's Medal of Honor for her heroism that day. Then there is Ronald Bucca, a New York fire marshal and a 29-year U.S. Army veteran with the 101st Airborne. Fire Marshal Bucca saved a number of people that day by assisting them from the escaping building. Eventually, he made it all the way to the 78th floor of the second tower when it collapsed. He was a firefighter for 23 years and would become New York's only fire marshal ever to be killed in the line of duty. Or how about Leonard Hatton, an FBI special agent, a husband and father of 4 children, and a Marine Corps veteran. He was on his way to work when he saw the smoke from the North Tower of the World Trade Center. He responded immediately, even though he wasn't tasked to do so. He entered one of the towers, helping to evacuate victims until the towers fell. The article I'm referencing says it best. He must have been an extraordinary man, fighting fires as a volunteer fireman, fighting for freedom as a Marine, fighting crime as an FBI agent, and finally, fighting to save lives when it wasn't his responsibility. When everyone else was running out, he was running in. One of the more amazing stories involves a young man by the name of Wells Crowther. He worked for Sandler, O'Neill and Partners on the 104th floor of the South Tower as an equities trader. At about 9 a.m., he was on the phone in his office when disaster struck, and Wells Crowther sprang into action. Here's his story as told by 2 of the women he helped to safety. They sat bloody and petrified, the lights out, smoke engulfing the room and pain searing through their bodies. There was no escape from where they were in the South Tower, in pieces after being hit by United Airlines Flight 175 as far as they could tell. Then out of nowhere, a young man burst in and took control. In a strong, authoritative voice, he directed them to the stairway, which was veiled by darkness, wreckage, and haze, telling the injured to get out and the healthy to help them down. I see this incredible hero running back and forth, saving the day, recalled Judy Ween. In his mind, he had a duty to do, save people. He's definitely my guardian angel. No ifs and or buts, because without him, we would be sitting there waiting until the building came down, echoes Ling Young. Ween and Young were separated by a few minutes and a few floors that day, but they share a similar story and a single hero, Wells Crowther. Wells Crowther, who served as a volunteer firefighter as a teenager, has been credited with saving at least 18 lives that day, if not more. He entered and exited the building at least 3 times, helping evacuate trapped victims. He ultimately died when he entered the building one final time with other firefighters before it collapsed, as they made their way up the South Tower with the jaws of life to free more people. Yes, it's also countless stories like these that draw us here today to honor the memory of the heroes and the innocent victims of that tragic day. It's stories like these that allow us to heal and move forward as a nation and help us to value human life and realize that there are a lot of good people in the world, despite those that want to hurt us and seem to place no value on innocent human lives. So yes, this is a beautiful and appropriate memorial to honor the memory and lives so tragically taken on September 11th, 2001. And so it is that today, the 11th day of September 2013, we dedicate this memorial to honor the innocent lives lost, and just as importantly, may it serve as a reminder for generations to follow of the events of that day and of the lessons learned so that our great nation never has to experience another horrific day like that again. For as Winston Churchill once said, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. May God bless our great nation and this wonderful community in which we work and live. Thank you very much, folks. I really appreciate you being here this evening.
At this time, I'd like to once again ask the Winds of Change to step up and sing for us Alan Jackson's "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning?"
Where were you when the world stopped turning that September day? Out in the yard with your wife and children, or working on some stage in LA? Did you stand there in shock at the sight of that black smoke rising against that blue sky?
Did you shout out in anger and fear for your neighbor, or did you just sit down and cry?
Did you weep for the children who lost their dear loved ones? Pray for the ones who don't know.
Did you rejoice for the people who walked from the rubble, or sob for the ones left below?
Did you burst out in pride for the red, white, and blue, and heroes who died just doing what they do?
Did you look up to heaven for some kind of answer, and look at yourself and what really mattered?
I'm just a singer of simple songs. I'm not a real political man. I watch CNN, but I'm not sure I can tell you the difference in Iraq and Iran. But I know Jesus and I talk to God, and I remember this from when I was young. Faith, hope, and love are some good things He gave us. The greatest is love. Where were you when the world stopped turning that September day? Teaching a class full of innocent children, or driving on some cold interstate? Did you feel guilty 'cause you're a survivor? In a crowded room, did you feel alone?
Did you call up your mother and tell her you love her? Did you dust off that Bible at home?
Did you open your eyes and hope it never happened? Close your eyes and not go to sleep.
Did you notice the sunset for the first time in ages, or speak to a stranger on the street?
Did you lay down at night and think of tomorrow? Go out and buy you a gun?
Did you turn off that violent old movie you're watching and turn on I Love Lucy rerun?
Did you go to a church and hold hands with some stranger?
Stand in line to give your own blood?
Did you just stay at home and cling tight to your family
Thank God you have somebody to love.
I'm just a singer of simple songs. I'm not a real political man. I watch CNN, but I'm not sure I can tell you the difference in Iraq and Iran. But I know Jesus and I talk to God, and I remember this from when I was young. Faith, hope, and love are some good things He gave us, and the greatest is love. Where were you when the world stopped turning that September day?
I'm sure all of you certainly have a story and can remember where you were that particular day. Let me first give you a little bit of background on where we are, and shortly we're going to go down and unveil the monuments. We most certainly, amongst all the cities in the country, we too wanted to have a memorial and a piece of history to remember nearly 3,000 folks who lost their lives that day. We represented all of them with an American flag. There's nearly 3,000 that are spread here amongst these grounds. But there was a process, because the Port Authority in New York and New Jersey were inundated with requests. City of Brook Park were one of those. We did make application, and through Angelo's influence, we were able to get it a little quicker than it hoped or expected. Many fire departments, police departments across the country, you'll see larger pieces of steel, and they certainly were the first ones on that list. But as time went on, the requests were so plentiful, they had to get organized. And they did. So the application process took place, and they wanted you to have an idea what you were going to do. So we put together an idea, and you had to send measurements as part of that application, which we did. And it was a short time after that we got a letter saying that, come get it. So they gave you a day and a time that you needed to be there. So my wife and I were honored to go to New York 2 years ago in 2011. City of Brook Park, we were going to receive 2 granite floor tiles from the World Trade Towers, 2 feet by 3 feet. So as we drove to New York, and it was a different drive, if you can imagine. And my wife and I have talked about that on a number of occasions, and a lot more today, especially. A lot of emotions, a lot of different feelings, and as you approach, you come down the highway and you look out and you just see what a tremendous skyline, and a very large skyline. But certainly 2 great buildings were not part of that. Before we went over to the hangar at JFK, we visited the site, and again, very eerie. A lot of different stories, still a lot of emotions 10 years later, and a number of personal memorials that were all part of that entire area. The next morning came, and we got in the van that we had gotten from Enterprise on Smith Road, and we wanted to make sure we were there between those times that they told us. So we went over to Hangar 17 at JFK Airport, and you walked into a room, and there was a timeline, and it just told you a lot of the events, certainly the day, and what has happened after that. There was a book to sign in, and as I paged through that book and I signed Brook Park in, there were many cities across the country who had already been there. We went through a set of doors. There was a small office, and a gentleman came out to to take care of us that day. Just a big guy. He was truly a big man. And as we told him who we were, where we were from, a couple other people went in the back, and they were going to go get the piece of the artifact that was going to be delivered to the city of Brook Park. So we had a few minutes to just talk. And he proceeded to tell a number of stories, but certainly ones that were very personal to him. So here is a very large man, 6'5", who lost friends, who lost firemen that day, personal friends and family members. And it was crushing, just crushing. And it was very emotional for us, but it was also it was a great feeling that we could be there and listen to him and tell that story. He did tell us we had to promise one thing, that Brook Park had to send photos and let us know what they did. So after our ceremony in the next couple days, we will have plenty of photos to send them and to the Port Authority to let them know what we did and how proudly we have represented them. On our way back, I had already told myself we were going to drop off the granite floor tiles to Milano Monument. And tonight with us is Michael Feinberg from Milano Monument, Jim Milano, who have also helped us design what you're going to see here in a few moments. But I want to thank them and recognize them for their great work. And again, you all see how great it was. It also is as Angelo had said, it's very historical. Today, the children in schools, this becomes history. We have all lived through this, those of us that are a little older, but it's our children who will now just, in the future, this will be part of history. And the Berea City schools or any school across the country, they're going to talk about 9/11. So we felt that what is inscribed on each of these three monuments, and it is all represented in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the World Trade Towers, and the Pentagon. We have inscribed historical dates and timelines, the flight, the aircraft, number of people who have lost their lives. And a message is very constant on here, is basically, which we all believe, that we will never forget. You'll see that depicted on these three monuments. In the middle of the largest one, you will see the Twin Towers. And it is those towers are inserts of actual floor tiles. And when Vic and I today, we've talked about that a number of times. How many people were either running in to save people or running out on those tiles, running for their lives? And it again is very emotional, but they're going to be right here. What you're not going to see today, we will in our fire department and in our police department and at City Hall, there will be plaques which will be made up of the floor tiles, which will be hung in all three of those locations. This being the most public, we certainly hope that you tell your friends and neighbors and loved ones about this great monument. So at this point, I'm going to ask these gentlemen behind me to join us. The other thing, let me say real quickly how these are placed. That is covered in white is Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Red, the Twin Towers. In blue is the Pentagon. The Pentagon being the closest for all those veterans and military, closest to the monument here, with great respect to all of you who have served our country. The Pentagon being the military headquarters of the United States. So, again, very historic, placed with respect to the military and certainly our first responders. So at this time, gentlemen, if you'll join me. Now I'd like to introduce to you Brook Park Police Auxiliary, Gary Caudle, who will sing God Bless the USA.
Nine years ago today, my wife and I decided to get married. And I asked her what day she would like to be married on. I left it up to her. She said 9/11. I said, why 9/11? She goes, because I want to make a sad day into a happy day. So today's our anniversary. Happy anniversary, honey. Happy anniversary. You know, on 9/11, the country came together, all the flags, everybody stood up, and they held hands. Would you please do that today? Things were gone. I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Do we have any Americans out here tonight? Woo! Thank you. Hoorah. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, sea to shiny sea, Detroit down to Houston, New York to LA, where there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. You can all sit again. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you the Brook Park Fire Chief, Mark Ramick, and again, our first responders down here in front of us with the fireman's prayer.
In 4 months, I get to retire after a 33-year career in firefighting. This prayer, thank you. This prayer is for all the firefighters who don't get that honor. When I am called to duty, God, whenever flames may rage, give me the strength to save some life, whatever be its age. Help me to embrace a little child before it's too late. or some older person from the horror of that fate. Enable me to be alert and hear the weakest shout, and quickly and efficiently to put the fire out. I want to fill my calling and give the best in me to guard my neighborhood and protect his property. And if according to your will, I have to lose my life, please bless with your protecting hand my children and my wife.
Thank you, Chief. And now I'd like to introduce Brook Park Police Chief Jim Foster, and also recognize the first responders, the Brook Park Police Department. Thank you.
I would like to recite the policeman's prayer for the 60 police officers who lost their lives 12 years ago today, which forever changed the lives of their families. In addition, I would also like to remember the 185 local police officers who also paid the supreme sacrifice by losing their lives while performing their duties in their local communities. Dear Lord, be with me on my beat, this day and every day. Grant that each and every block I walk may ease a brother's way. Let me be kind to the old, and to the young be strong. But let me triumph over those whose acts are cruel and wrong. And if according to your plan I am to lose my life, please bless with your protecting arm my children and my wife. Amen.
Again, thank you to both Chief Ramick and Chief Foster. And I'd like to ask the audience if you would stand again for Father Olszewski, who will lead us in our closing prayer, and Mr. Russ Kilpatrick, who will be performing Amazing Grace.
And if you'd be so kind to bow your heads. Lord God, the abundance of your strength helps enrich your servants and safeguard them. Strengthened by your blessing, may they always be thankful to you and bless you with unending joy. And let the effect of your blessing remain with your faithful people. For all we remember whose lives were lost and whose lives were affected by the events of September 11th, 2001, to give them new life and strength of spirit, so that the power of your love will enable them to accomplish what is right and good. Amen.
Again, thanks to Mr. Russ Kilpatrick, who was on the bagpipe. Our rifle salute, the VFW Post 6676 and the American Legion Post 610 Joint Honor Guard in Bree and Brook Park, Ohio. And TAPS, Mr. Bill Carson, U.S. Navy veteran, and Mr. Mike Mahoney, U.S. Army veteran. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This will conclude our ceremony today. I certainly hope that this dedication and memorial makes you very proud, and it should make the United States of America very proud. And God bless our country and our great city, and we will never forget. Thank you all for being here and for everybody who participated. Good evening.